Hello YouTube and welcome to another network tutorial. So in this video I'm going to show you how to use network authentication using Radius server. So are you ready? Let's get started. So as you may know, Radius is an acronym for Remote Authentication Dial-In User Service. It's also called AAA server, which stands for Authentication, Authorization and Accounting. Okay, so actually Radius server is standard server for network authentication and accounting. It's easy to use and can be used for communication accounting platforms. Okay, so here there is a lot of actually program that you can install. There is a free Radius server that you can download, but actually it uses mainly in Linux. But for Windows user you can download this WinRadius actually program here. So you can download it for free and use it to authenticate user for your different network devices. Okay, but free version only support 5 users, so if you want more users you have to pay for it. Okay, so actually it's a zip file. You can just type WinRadius on Google and you will get it. It's a zip file that contains 2 programs. There is the main program WinRadius, as you can see here, and there is Radius test for testing actually that is working. Okay, so here I'm gonna show you a practical example how you can use it. Okay, so first of all, when you download the program you have to launch it. So I have to click on this winradius.exe file, and let me just show you the GUI. So this is the GUI. So the first thing that you have to do is actually to link the program with its database, because as you can see here on the folder it uses actually access database here, winradius.mdb. Okay, so the first thing that you have to do is to go to the settings, database, and here you can see that you have to configure ODBC automatically. Okay, so I have to click on this button here. Here I get the message that create ODBC failed, because I already done that. Okay, but for you have to click on it, and you have also to quit or exit the program and launch it once again. Okay, so let me show you one. So after the first step has been completed, you can now actually add your users. Okay, so let me add a user, for example here, in order to authenticate with my Cisco actually router. So in order to add user, it's pretty simple. You go to operation and add user. So I will give it as name, for example Sarah, and I will give it a password also, password. So you can choose whatever password you want, but those are the main thing that you have to enter in order to configure actually user. So remember, the username is Sarah and the password is this password here. Okay, so and I click OK. So here you can see that the user has been added successfully. So actually the user is added to this database here, the access database. So if you have an access program on your machine, you can just click Shift Enter and open the Microsoft Access in order to see if the user has been added to your database. So actually the database contains here, as you can see, 3 tables, and one of the table is called TP user. So if I click on it, you can see that indeed Sarah has been added. So here there is username and password. Okay, now so now that Sarah has been added, I can actually test it against this WinRadius server. Okay, so I will keep this program here running, WinRadius, which is our main server, and I will go and launch this WinRadius, or actually Radius test, in order to test that everything is working properly. So here WinRadius IP, so we have both program on the same machine. So I will keep this local IP address of my machine. But if you have installed your WinRadius on different machine, you have here to give it the IP address of your WinRadius server. Okay. So actually the default port are okay. The message access request, but you can change it if you want. But here we are just testing access request, and here I have to test using the user that I have been created. So the user name is Sarah, and remember the password is like this. Okay, and I will send here actually this request. So here you can see that I get some input on my WinRadius server. And the most interesting thing here that user Sarah authenticate OK, which means that our server is working OK and it has authenticated our username Sarah. So I can use it on my other devices on my network in order to authenticate this user Sarah. So here there is a lot of options on this program. So you can hear the log, you can clear the log if you want. Okay, you can view other things, and there are also some settings, some very important settings. So in order to configure actually our device here for to use WinRadius, so here I'm using Cisco router or Cisco actually ASA Firewall here. So the most important thing that I must actually provide for my Cisco firewall to work with this WinRadius is actually here the NAS secrets. So in order for the firewall to authenticate with this WinRadius, they must have the same actually the NAS secrets, which is in this case WinRadius. But you can change the secret if you want. It's like passwords that authenticate actually the firewall with the WinRadius. Okay, and also the authorization and accounting port, you must know them because you will need them for your network devices. Okay, so now let's go back to our firewall in order to actually configure this WinRadius and test if the user Sarah can use actually WinRadius in order to authenticate to my Cisco ASA firewall. So I will use this program here called Cisco ASTM in order to configure actually the radio server. So I will go to configuration here, and for the AAA server group. So here I have to add a AAA server group because actually a radio server is also sometimes called AAA server. So we'll add group. So I will call it WinRadius, but you can call it whatever you want. So the protocol here I'm using is Radius, but you can see here my firewall offers me a lot of protocol that I can use. I can use, for example, TACAX Plus if I want. I can use NT domain. I can use also LDAP if I have Windows Server domain. But here I'm using Radius, so the protocol is Radius. Okay, so I guess all other options are pretty good. So all I have to do is to click on OK. So now that my server group has been created, I have to add a server on it. So I select this WinRadius AAA server group and I will add my server. Okay, so here my server, or actually this Win server, is on the inside interface, so I have to choose it, and here I have to provide the IP address where the Win server is installed. Okay, so actually my WinRadius is installed on my Windows 11 machine, so the IP address of it is 192.168.1.15. okay, so this is the IP address where I have installed WinRadius. Okay, and the most important thing here is the server authentication port and accounting port. So those ports are not the one I'm using, because remember here I told you that for my Win server or WinRadius. Actually, I'm using in settings here 1812 and 1813. Okay, so let's keep that 1812 and 1813. Okay, and also the most important thing is NAS secret. So remember, it was WinRadius, so I have to enter it here, WinRadius. So this is the one I showed you before. Let me show you once again. It's this NAS secret here. Okay, so now that I have entered the most important parameters, I have to click on OK. So now I have configured everything I need on my firewall here, ASA, so I have to apply that. So this is the command. If you don't want to use the GUI for your ASA firewall, you can just use this commands here on the command prompt. Okay, so let's send them and let's save the configuration. Here we go. So now everything is okay. So now let's test that. So in order to test it, I will launch once again my WinRadius server just to see the logs. So I will clear the logs here to see if I will get my SARA authenticated. So in order to actually get authenticated using SSH to my firewall, I will use just PPTP here. So I will enter the IP address of my firewall, which is 192.168.1.2. Here I will use SSH open. Okay, so this is the PPTP program that allows me to authenticate or actually use SSH in order to authenticate to my firewall. So here I will enter SARA, and the password here I will give the password that I have configured in this WinRadius. So remember, it was password. So password. Here we go. So access is denied. Why is that? Because actually here it's using by default our local database in Cisco actually firewall. So I have to tell it to use actually this WinRadius. So I'll return back to AZM here, and for the AAA access here, you can see for the SSH it's using the local database stored in the ASA, but I want to use actually my server group with called WinRadius. Then it will use a local server. So it's always good to keep a local server, because when you don't have, or when your Windows Radius server fails, it can find other way to actually access your device. So here I'll use first WinRadius, then if it didn't find it, it will use our local database stored in our Cisco firewall. So I have to apply that. So here you can see that I'm using WinRadius, then the local. I will send that and I will save. Okay, so now everything is okay. Let's launch once again this, or let's restart the session. So I will log in once again as SARA user, and for the password I will use the password that I have configured. And here we go. You can see that now I get access. So you can see here on my WinRadius I get user SARA authenticated. Okay, so actually I get access to my network device, which is a Cisco firewall using this WinRadius server, which is actually just a Win application running on Windows 11 machine. So I can get all what I need. Show, for example, show version. Here I want to show you. So I can authenticate using the WinRadius server. Okay. So that was just a brief video to show you how to use WinRadius, which is a utility that you can install on your, which is actually free, that you can install in your Windows machine and authenticate your users using actually Radius protocol. Okay, as always, I hope it has been informative for you, and I want to thank you for viewing. Bye bye.